Okay. Hi again, everybody. We are back to record the iNaturalist and Seek app training session. We apologize for the technical difficulties that we had while trying to do it live last night, but we're very excited to be able to offer the recording that you can use and share with friends and family as well. So my name is Landere, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator for Blue Hill Heritage Trust, and I'm doing this training with Chrissy Allen, who's the Development Director for Blue Hill Heritage Trust. I'm going to get us started by sharing my screen, and I think, Chrissy, you might need to enable me, and then I'm going to walk you through the process of setting up a very simple project in iNaturalist. There's so much you can do. It's almost overwhelming at first, but it's also very exciting. But we thought we'd just start out with a simple project to get you started as kind of an introduction. So I'm going to share my screen. If you haven't already set up an account with iNaturalist, you'll want to do that. It's very simple. It's free. It's basically just asking you to come up with a username and a password. So I'm going to log into our account at Blue Hill Heritage Trust. Chrissy, can you see my screen okay?
I can, yes.
Awesome.
We can give a shout out to the Blue Hill Library for their lightning fast internet, which we're using from our cars today.
Yes, thank you so much.
Support the library.
This is very, very helpful. Okay, so now we are in our Blue Hill Heritage Trust iNaturalist account. This is our dashboard, and I'm going to show you today how to set up a project, as we have done for most of our trails at this point. And it basically allows you to document, inventory, and catalog any species that you choose. And I'm going to show you a little bit more about how you can choose if you want it to be open and have no exclusion filters and be able to upload your observations from anything from, fungi to seaweed to plants and beyond, or if you want to just concentrate on one kingdom or one taxa of some sort. So to start with, you're going to go up to the top of your dashboard where it says More, and in the drop-down menu, click Places. And it's going to bring you to this beautiful map, and then you're going to click Add a New Place. And today, let's see, which one are we going to do? Just realized I already did Bluff Head last night. Which trail have we not done yet? I guess I'll just kind of make one up today, even because I think we have all of our Blue Hill Heritage Trust trails saved already. So I think I'm going to do one for my house, which is on Huckleberry Lane.
And while Lander's typing this, I'll chime in and say that some of our participants who joined us yesterday were noticing that you do need to have a certain number of observations done with iNaturalist before you can start creating a place and setting up projects. It's iNaturalist's way of trying to get you to do some practice runs beforehand. And so you can look up on their website just how many that is. And that's what I'm going to be going over with folks later. So if you're following along and trying to do this at the same time and saying, wait, I'm not seeing the same buttons, it's probably because you don't have enough observations. So we'll help you take care of that in a bit.
Yes, thank you, Chrissy. Okay, so I'm zooming in. It takes a few minutes to zoom in. I'm just zooming into kind of my neck of the woods here. And it's basically this swath between the Salt Pond and Blue Hill Bay. So once you've zoomed in and you've identified your road and approximately your place, you want to set boundaries that are bigger even than you think your plot is going to be that you're going to be exploring and drawing observations from. Because if you accidentally take an observation just outside of the place that you have made here in iNaturalist, it won't upload it, and that can be kind of a bummer. So in order to make your perimeters for your place and fill it in and create your surface area, you're going to click Draw Polygon. I'm going to start here at the head of the road, and you just click, and you can go out into the water if you have a spot where you might be kayaking or fishing. Bring it all the way up here. And then you just have to make sure that your last and first point are joined together. Once you have your plot, you click Save Place. There we go. Okay, so now iNaturalist has this new place that you can draw on in a moment. So the next step is to create a new project. So going to Projects, under the Community drop-down tab. There's a lot of information on this page, but all you have to focus on is this little green tab that says Start a Project. And this brings you to a page where you have a couple of options. If this is your first iNaturalist project, you're going to want to stick to the left side of the collection projects. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor. The umbrella projects is after you have several collection projects set up and maybe you want to compare statistics across 2 or more of those projects, you can then create your umbrella project. Today we'll stick with collection projects. So I'm going to click Get Started. And it will ask you for a project name. I'm just going to call this one Huckleberry Lane, Blue Hill. And then I'm not going to do this right now, but you can upload a logo or a photograph for your banner that will be at the top of your project page. And then you can also choose a project icon, which is more like a little small square that kind of represents your project on the larger page of all the projects. And then you'll want to write something about your summary and what you want your students or your family or yourself to do with this project. And so I'm just going to say, help Huckleberry Lane residents document inventory, inventory and catalog species on Huckleberry Lane. And this is where you might specify if you want your community who's going to be participating in this to do something very specific, like just focus on invasive species or just focus on birds or whatever it might be. Most of our projects at Blue Heritage Trust, we want to just have completely general and open to any observations. So we have collection for project type, observation requirements. We found that it's good not to put any exclusion filters for our purposes, but you could, as I'm going to show you, if you wanted just to focus on birds, you could click birds and then you have that, and it will only allow people to upload photographs of birds in your project area. And you can add as many different filters as you like you could put butterflies and moths. For the purpose of this project I'm creating, I'm just not going to include anything so that then everything can be included. For the places, you will want to find the place that you previously created. So I think I had called it Huckleberry Lane. Yep. And I had put it under open space. And then for including users, we have found just leaving that blank as well so that anyone can participate is the best and easiest thing to do. There are some other qualifiers down here which we decided not to deal with, but it might be helpful for you, again, if you're trying to create something more specific. With older students, you might really want to focus in on a particular attribute of a species, like the life stage. But for our purposes, we're just going to make sure that it's casual. So I'm going to click data quality. So really anyone, even if they're not very familiar with this platform, can participate. For media type, we're just including any so that it could have photo or sound, whatever people choose. And again, we're not trying to say only include native species or only include introduced species. For this project, it can be any. And date observed, also any, again, keeping it very wide open. If you wanted to do a bio blitz, so 1-day project where everyone goes out and observes on their campus, then you might choose a date. And we have our admin, Blue Heritage Trust already here, so I'm going to click done. And that should create your project. And again, at the top here, this is where you'd have your photograph of your place and your banner. And you can also choose the color that you want and personalize it. You can see your map here. And so nobody has taken any photos and uploaded them to iNaturalist in this area. Occasionally, if you create a project and there's overlap with other projects, photos will immediately begin popping up, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Here, there is nothing. And then I'm going to pass it over to Chrissy now, and she's going to talk a little bit about how you upload photos to iNaturalist and then take us on to the Seek app as well.
Excellent. All right. Am I the host now?
Not quite yet. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to make you the host.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to pull up this little slideshow that I made. And here we go. Okay. So I'm going to do a brief tutorial on how to actually use these apps. And I have used iNaturalist as well as Nature's Notebook in the classroom with students and on outreach events. And Seek is a newer app, which I am absolutely in love with. And it's actually a part of the iNaturalist software program. So I'm going to go through some of this. One thing I'm going to start by saying is that iNaturalist has a lot of really great tools for how to use this app in the classroom and with children. They're very, very serious about privacy issues with children and want to make sure that kids aren't taking pictures with other children's faces in them, things like that, because a lot of times these photos are going up in the cloud and can be seen globally with a GPS coordinate. And so they are really serious about that stuff. Also, they have zero tolerance for any sort of hate speech, prejudice speech, things like that. And I did actually run into an issue with a group of students who they were testing out the app, learning how it worked. They took a picture of their hand and said, "What is this?" And because there are scientists who are live and will respond and confirm what you're identifying, one of the scientists right away responded in kind of a funny way. He said it's a Homo sapien, which I thought was hilarious. What I didn't realize was the kid responded and said, "You're a homo," and thinking he was just being funny and doing a play on words, but they shut down our account immediately, like within minutes. And so just, it's really, really good if you're using this for educational purposes with younger people to go through, look at the resources that they have available for you and to make sure that you're using it, you know, in the most responsible way possible with them. And that's where the Seek app actually, I think, is a brilliant addition and sort of removes the opportunity for kids to do some of those things which they might not realize the severity of it. All right, so we're going to start with iNaturalist here. And iNaturalist is a great citizen science sort of global piece of software that people are using all around the world. There's really cool aspects to iNaturalist where you can explore and kids can see iNaturalist observations all around the world and zoom in on places in Egypt or Antarctica or Alabama or Alaska. It's really, really cool for kids to see how people are doing this all around the world and that scientists are using this data. One example is one of our volunteers, Susan Gilford, who's a trail steward for Carter Nature Preserve. She has started this incredible iNaturalist project for Carter Nature Preserve. And in it, she did a big inventory of what was on the property as a part of her Maine Master Naturalist training. And she took a photo of a flower. I think this is how it goes. She took a photo of a flower and a scientist from out of the state contacted her and said, "Do you know where that flower is? Can you go back and get a closer photo or get the flower?" And it turned out the flower had this very rare fungus growing on it or in it, and he noticed it through her iNaturalist thing. And so there are real scientists using this, which is why I love it for using it with kids, because it helps break down that sort of barrier of science being this big abstract thing and world, where they get to actually participate in this community and help add to the data that's being used in research projects everywhere. So it's very cool in that way. So to use iNaturalist, after you have set up your account, and this isn't even, you don't even necessarily have to have a project, but if you do, then Lander showed you how to do that. You set up the account, and these are a bunch of photos of me actually doing this yesterday on an iPad. So you touch your little icon there at the bottom, which is the blue iNaturalist bird, and it will immediately pop up to your home page, and you click the observe down below. And that means you're ready to take an observation. So then you go to wherever it is that you're going to be observing, and I chose this piece of moss outside of our office, and you get in and you take a photo of it, and your camera will turn on, and you press the green button and it takes a photo, and it gives you the option immediately to either keep the photo and move along or retake the photo. So if you take the photo but then the wind blows in the middle of it and the leaves all blurry or whatever, then you can always retake it. From there, you're going to see that you have the photo up here in the top left corner, and you can add photos if you want. A lot of times with iNaturalist observations, it's great if you can get more than one photo from a different perspective. For a tree, for example, you might get a photo of the bark, an up close of the leaves, and then you might step way, way back and get a photo of the whole tree. And that really helps confirm and verify what the observation is. It's going to ask you all of these questions like, what did you see here? And then it also provides the information down below about the date, the timestamp, where you were. It's really great to have your location on your iPad or your device so that it can automatically pinpoint where you were. You can always go back and change that if you're out in the woods and you're using, say, an iPad and you don't have service is not connected to the cellular network or whatever. You can go back in and you can manually manipulate these things later. So having a live connection is not required for this at all, which is another great part of using it with kids. So you go in and you click that little question mark, what did you see? If you are connected to the internet, like in the screen below, you're going to see that it will automatically start doing recognition of the photo, and it will give you some options of what that could be. If you're not connected to the internet, it's not going to give you those things, but you can always go back in later. You can type your species name in at that time and then go back in and change things later. I started typing in moss and it automatically came up with some selections for me, and I just chose the top one that it was in the mosses category because I really wasn't sure. From there, you're just going to click go and it's going to start syncing. It only syncs when it is connected to the cloud. And so if you are out in the middle of the woods and you don't have service, when you get back in connected to your Wi-Fi or whatever, then it will start syncing. If you're doing this on a cell phone, it'll probably automatically sync unless you've turned your data off. So it will start syncing up, and once that's done, it only takes like 15 seconds. Then you can go and check and make sure that it actually landed in your projects. If you're trying to do a project on your school campus or in your backyard or whatever. As Lander mentioned, the maps are a little bit finicky in iNaturalist, and a lot of that is because GPS is not always as consistent on our cell phones and devices here in Maine as we would like it to be. And so it's really good if you are doing this as a part of a project to immediately click projects, go and start typing in the project that you were looking at. For me, this is the BHHT office campus, and I click on that and I can see, yes, my mosses did show up. If it didn't show up, it probably means that I was a little outside of the map, and I might want to go and click edit on that observation, and you can literally move your map around. It's really, really easy to do. And then you click done and you check again to see if it now pops up, and it will pop up instantly, which is really satisfying. So when you go and you click on that moss, now that it's in your project, you can also see what stage this is at for data quality. So casual grade is just like any person like me going out and snapping a photo of moss and saying this is moss. It's now at the needs ID phase, and iNaturalist works with teams of scientists and botanists and biologists all around the world who all specialize in certain things. So they will get pinged on their email that there is an iNaturalist observation that needs to be verified. There needs to be, I believe, 2 or 3 people who iNaturalist has deemed, an expert, who verify it in order to make it research grade all the way over. But it's very cool for students to see when it does become research grade, because then they know that that data exists in, with information that scientists are using in various studies and things like that. So it's really, really cool and satisfying. One of the nice things that happens sometimes is if, say I had put lichen and I didn't put it as mosses, you can see that there are people who will chime in who are certified by iNaturalist to do so, who will correct you. So here I was working with some students who had taken a photo actually of bittersweet, and they put it in as Japanese knotweed. They were doing an invasives project at their school, and this person wrote in and just says, actually, Japanese knotweed does not vine as this plant is doing. Or over in the squirrels, they were looking at footprints in the snow, and they were giving some feedback about what they thought it might be and how they can tell. And so it's really nice for students who maybe are learning and trying to guess on their own what things are. Say you put something as a hemlock tree, but it was really a fir tree. Oftentimes an iNaturalist person will chime in and will say, well, actually, that's not a hemlock, it's a fir, and here's how you can tell the difference. And so that's a really nice thing for students to be able to check back in on their observations and see if they were right or have a learning moment. And I've never seen anybody through iNaturalist just being, rude or unpleasant. They always provide some sort of context, like it does not vine as this plant is doing. So that's a great feature of that. So because iNaturalist has existed for several years now, and people are using this globally, and they've gotten so many verified research grade photos of these various plants and animals and insects at a lot of different life stages, they now have this huge bank of photos to go off of. And they've basically created Seek, which I like to say is like facial recognition software for the natural world. And Seek is super cool. You can use it offline. I actually don't have a smartphone. I use an iPod, and so when I'm not connected to Wi-Fi, I don't have any connection, but I can still use Seek out in the middle of the woods. So it's a great app to use. I absolutely love it. So Seek, you actually just, you can go right on to add the app to whatever, and you log in through your iNaturalist account, and that connects them, which is great. So you click your little green leaf here on your iPad, and you go in, and your home screen is going to look like this on the left. It's going to show you nearby species from where you are. They always have really great challenges and things that are going on, which can be really, really fun to do with your student, your home learner, whatever's going on there. And you also can just do your own nature identification. So you click the little green camera at the bottom, and it's going to pop up this reminder to always be safe and not trespass and don't eat things if you don't know what they are, things like that. So a nice helpful reminder. And then your camera turns on, and it immediately starts going through the taxonomy, and it gets to genus quite quickly. And it will hover on genus for a while, because then getting to species is a little more finicky. And it will tell you, okay, it's in the wood sorrels family. And down at the bottom of the screen here, you can see it says almost at species. So it will tell you that it's almost there, and just keep the camera focused on that general area. You don't have to be absolutely still, but keep the camera generally focused there, because it's almost at species. And then sometimes it will tell you to keep scanning that environment or get a different angle on it, because as you can see here, I was up above the wood sorrel, but I really needed to get down so that I could see the trunk of the wood sorrel for it to determine that, oh, the species is an upright yellow wood sorrel. And so once you do that, my screen's a little cut off, but at the very bottom you can see it says, that's it, now take a photo. And so as soon as it gets to species, you can take a photo and it will log it in. And I was out in the rain yesterday and the gale force wind, so my iPad got little water drops on it. But you can see that all of a sudden it gives you all of this great information that says you've observed a new species, and you can either view the species or you can post to iNaturalist. Now, this is something you can only do if you are connected to the internet. If you're out in the middle of the woods and you have no connection at all, no data connection at all, you cannot post to iNaturalist. It will still save your observation, but if you are connected to the internet, then it's a great opportunity to add this observation to your project that you have created through iNaturalist. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So I was by the office, so I had Wi-Fi. So I clicked post to iNaturalist, and it immediately brings up the post to iNaturalist page in the middle, and it shows sort of just the basic details of the observation, and then I click post, and it will take a minute or two, and then all of a sudden it's done. And it tells you it's posted and that's all great. And then you can go and you can check out your species. Again, viewing the species is only something you can do when you have a data connection, but you can always go back and view the species at a later time. You cannot go back and post to iNaturalist after you finish that observation. So that's an important thing to remember. But even just having the Seek View Species alone is incredible, because when you click View Species, you get all of this fabulous information about this plant. You see if it's native in your area, if it's invasive, if it's non-native. It tells you sort of what that means. It gives you an about the plant. There's a link for you to go online and learn more. You have a range map there where you can see where other people have observed the same species in your general area. It shows you the taxonomy of it, and then it shows you more information about, you know, just sort of the general plant, the seasonality of it, all sorts of information. So on Seek alone, using this with students or grown-ups, because as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it, you get all of this information right there, and it comes up immediately. And you can always go back. So you can take your students out and do a ton of observation on their school campus, and then come back in and have them go through their observations and just have this information alone to help them write a report or do a data study, whatever. If you happen to have devices that connect online, or you have internet connection close enough to where you're doing this at your school, it's a great idea to post to iNaturalist, because then you can continue to add to a project and keep everything really nicely bundled in the same area. So to use iNaturalist and to see if it did show up in there, you click on your little iNaturalist icon. And then you go to the bottom of the screen where it says me, and me is my observations. And so you click on that and you see there it is right at the top, upright yellow wood sorrel. So you can see that that observation did make it over to your iNaturalist page. And then you can check on what the status of that is. You can see it still needs ID, because now it is going to be ID'd and go through getting its research grade. And then you can click on projects, and you can see that with the projects, you can go right up to the top, see BHHT office campus, and then you can see that in here you have your yellow upright wood sorrel. So that is showed up in the projects as well. So your observations are really your list of everything that you have observed, but then your projects really help sort them and organize them based on the places you're going and the different projects you're doing. So you don't have to click on every individual observation to remember where you took that photo. Having the places preset and the projects preset helps to organize that. And so that can be a really cool feature of having those two apps connected in that way. So when you're on Seek also, there are all these other really fantastic things that you can do. On the Seek app, there's a little side screen that will pop up from the side when you touch it, and you can see your achievements, your challenges, your observations. You can connect to your iNaturalist, things like that. There are all sorts of really fun challenges that it will give you, like, okay, now we want you to go out and find 6 different species in amphibians, or 6 different types of fungi, or whatever. And it gives fun challenges, and that alone can just be a really cool thing to do with your students, to get them to really learn about and understand these species in a different way. And on your observations, you can see on the screen, it says to you, okay, you have plants, but you don't have any amphibians or fungi or fish or reptiles, and it goes on from there. The screen goes down. So it can sort of prompt you to try and find those things and challenge yourself, which is a really cool thing to do with your students. So all of this is really great to use in STEM education. It really helps to connect students with the scientific community. It's really easy to use anywhere. Ideally, you're using it with an internet connection or a cellular connection. But even if you don't have that, these apps are still fabulous to use. And one of the really nice things is that with iNaturalist, you can go in and you can manually add things later. So let's say you don't have iPads in your classroom that you feel comfortable letting your students take out, but you do have a camera or whatever it is, or you as the teacher want to make sure that you're able to really review all of the photos to make sure no students' faces are in them ahead of time. You can very easily manually add these things to iNaturalist after the fact, and drag and drop it onto your map and do all of that, and then it will appear in your project. So even if you're out using Seek and the kids have gotten a ton of great observations through Seek, but you were out in the middle of the woods and you didn't have a connection, you still can take those photos that they use for their observations and you can manually add them onto iNaturalist after the fact. And you can do it really easily from an iPad, and you can teach your students how to do it, but have you verify everything before they click send on it. And these are all free. So they're just really incredible apps. They're free. We can't say enough good about them. So that's the end of my spiel on there.
Awesome. I feel like I just learned a lot too, Chrissy. Thank you.
Excellent.
Cool.
So I'm trying to think, Landere, what were a couple of the questions that folks had yesterday about all of this that we maybe can address on here?
There was one question which I feel like you kind of addressed in this last slide, but what are some of the kind of the whys for the iNaturalist beyond just taking the photos and learning the name of the species and putting them somewhere? And I feel like you kind of covered that, but are there any other ideas of like the why of doing this, or like the bigger picture of like the purpose?
Yeah, so I think, again, with iNaturalist, you have the ability to sort and organize your projects in a way that is more useful if the students are doing a real data collection project. It also gives them that interaction with the scientific community, which they do not have through Seek. So Seek is simply taking the data that's verified through iNaturalist and using it for instant identification, which that in and of itself is fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous, and I love it. But for maybe some older students or a more involved project, using iNaturalist and adding that element can really can make it a richer, I think, experience for them, and to see the multiple steps of how to do this. So iNaturalist you need an iNaturalist account for the kids to access Seek, but other than that, you don't have to do anything, because iNaturalist is still benefiting from any of the observations that you're making through Seek. They still are running that up through their verification and looking at things. You just don't have any idea whether things have been verified or not if you're not, linking it to your iNaturalist. So iNaturalist is definitely a little higher level to use, a little more complicated to use than Seek. So it might be that you want to get kids started using Seek, and then you want to see if adding iNaturalist is a good thing. Or maybe just the iNaturalist is something that the teacher does and the kids are using Seek. But I highly recommend it. I think it's a really great program to use. So we have our coworkers have found us at the library. Any other questions?
One of the ones that kind of came up in conversation was about somebody had said that they were making accounts through Facebook for both of their Seek and their iNaturalist, and I had remembered you saying something about if you have like the same account for both of those things, that it can be easier for them to talk to each other. Is that correct?
If they have their
Or
Seek and iNaturalist, that I'm not sure about. I would
okay,
want to check on that.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. I think those were kind of the two big things that came up. And I think I would add to the purpose of it, it's like this amazing tool to kind of get started in building a relationship with the plants and the species outside your back door. And once you have identified something, there's so much more that you can then go and do to have that relationship. Because if you have positively identified it, then maybe you can start exploring how to use it and have that relationship in other ways as well, which
Yeah,
is really
absolutely.
exciting.
Absolutely. Good. All right. Well, we encourage people to reach out to us with any other questions, and we're happy to do any little, masked up tutorials for teachers, things like that. So let us know how we can help, and good luck, and go exploring and have fun.